um, I like to pretty regularly myself and with others consider perspective, and in other words, why we do what we do, and maybe what's to mark out some differentiations. So what I want you to share now is, what do you think it means to be a prince in training, or to be a prince? What is a prince?
One who is to take the place of the king.
Yeah. What would you think is a more common ideal and thereby definition of what a prince is?
Son of the king.
Okay.
Someone that is destined to inherit the kingdom?
Okay. In very modern day circumstance, what is a prince of Saudi Arabia? A Saudi prince. They still have kings that rule in various areas.
High in stature and wealth, probably.
Yeah. Do whatever you want.
Mm.
Have whatever you want. These are the guys that buy $2 million high-end cars and leave them sitting in the desert after they drive them one time. That kind of, there's still very much an idea that label, if it's properly given, is one that basically means you can do whatever you want. I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, think of the princes of England currently. There are several. So not all are in direct succession to the throne or to the place of rulership, not and in a particular order by way of the elimination of the nearness of relation to the king. So in essence, that's the way that princes operate in the world right now. And there is still an aspect of coming to rule. But I think the greater perspective that most people have is not about their responsibility. It's about their power, position, wealth, and influence. That aside, let's talk about, in addition to that, a little bit of a cultural difference with a prince and the way that Western society works and what they promote. Maybe we need to go a little bit further on the better definition of what a prince is. So yes, a prince is one who is a successor to the king. What does that mean about their life? So what I said initially, what is a prince in training? Well, that's a little bit redundant. Because by nature, a prince is one. So where do you think that the English word apprentice comes from? It's very similar. It means you're learning how to do something. So a prince is not really meant to be a place of privilege, apart from the privilege of knowing what you are learning and who you are to become and how that works. So if a prince then is one who is being trained to be able to take on responsibility of rulership, what does that entail? What kind of perspective of life does that entail?
Discipline life.
It does. From a very young age, there are things that you can and cannot do for very specific reasons. Because you've been set apart. You're not like other people. You don't live with the commoner's view. More specifically, at a very young age, you should be taught how the society works, and that everything that you do is for the whole and not for yourself. That there's something beyond your own life. So God made Jacob to be the Prince of God, the apprentice of God. He wasn't a king. He went from one way of life, which was what? Grasping at the heel, deceiving his father, tricking Laban. I know how to get my way. I know how to become something. And then he wrestled with God. And God changed his name. Israel, the Prince of God. But for what end? For what purpose? To continue on in his former ways? He couldn't even do it. He was touched at the hip. He couldn't even walk well for the rest of his life. And it was at that point, when he changed his name to Prince of God, that he reiterated the covenant of his father and of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac. You were set apart. Abram, I'm calling you out. Isaac, you will not take a wife from another nation. Jacob, you will not live in this unruly way. But we live in a day and time, and specifically here in the Western civilization, where independence, make your own way, create your own path, achieve your own dream, pursue your own happiness, is the highest view, which is why, from a Western perspective, ideals of rulership, being a prince, a king, take on very individualistic perspectives, when that's never what it was supposed to be. I'm setting you apart to enable you to become a people. And someone has to have that perspective. So throughout Confucius' travels and through many of his Analects, he in his interaction with his own disciples who are going to be coming into places of authority and influence over other people, reminds them constantly what they are for, not for themselves. They were princes. And in your own mind, and I know that this isn't a castle or some huge place of substantial wealth and prominence in the world. But don't forget that God called Jacob out in the middle of the desert when he slept on a rock. You need to know how to function in the station of life that you are given as one who has been set apart to be an example. That's much of what we've discussed in the Analects. not by rising up over others with a rod, or by coming down from the place that you've been appointed to force other people to do things. But for sure, to master yourself as a living example of a way of life. So to consider yourself as a prince in God's house, in the midst of the peoples of the world, is not high and lofty thinking, because you shouldn't be thinking about it in the way that men think about those rules, or take advantage of them over others. It's always on behalf and for others, not for yourself. And again, you don't have to be in a place of human recognition in order to live in that way. You don't have to be recognized among the peers that sit with you at this table as that. I think there would be some mutual admonishment and encouragement if that was the case. But that is not a requirement for you to be able to posture yourself in such a way in life, in the way that you learn, in the way that you relate, in the way that you look ahead. When you look ahead in your life, think about this. Do a quick evaluation on yourself. When you think about what's ahead in your life, does it have anything to do with others? Apart from the people that you think are supposed to be part of your life, a spouse, close friends, immediate family. Or do you look ahead in life knowing the responsibility that you will carry as it relates to other people? Many of you probably, when you have imagined what's ahead in life, you're only thinking about what's for you. I'm not saying that's bad, that you're longing or looking for bad things. You may look ahead and say, well, I don't know what's ahead. It's not really any different. Because that's primarily in the context of yourself. Not what you've already been set apart for. And this is not something that you convince yourself of. It's something that's received from the Lord. That is what I am. That is what I'm doing. It's a work in progress. I'm learning. But no matter what my station is, and no matter what season of life I am, and no matter what my current responsibility is, I will do it as that. Because that's what I am. The heart of our dear brother Emmanuel was the heart of a prince and a king. God never gave him a station in life. Only over a few little people. A very obscure little people. But I can assure you that his posture in life, his perspective in life, his submission to the will of God toward his people was one such that if he was put in the highest role, he could have fulfilled it with righteousness. He could have. He knew that. But he operated in the allotment with the same mind and heart in his station of life. And he did not think that was a robbery for God to do that. That's true humility. Not the grandeur of men. Doesn't matter. What are your thoughts? Benji, you're smiling at me a lot. The Lord been speaking to you about this?
Mm. In ways, I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to express, but he's been talking to me a lot about other people, actually. And that's kind of what was interesting to me. I don't know, I've just been considering how I would show a culture of God, you know? I mean, it's very simple thoughts, but there's been some people that he's brought, even in recent days, that he's just kind of sparked that as a thought, you know? Where I think that season of being able to expand out is coming in some ways, in small increments, and so it's exciting to me, really. I think that's very, very crucial, I guess, that perspective of being a prince, you know, and a very big contrast, I guess, from the worldly culture and the culture that we've all been brought up in, I think.
For sure.
But yeah, I'm encouraged, for sure.
Let me ask you this. Does a prince make him or herself a prince? No. They're born into it. They're born into it. What have you been born into? See, very few people believe. It's not about a title. It's not about a title. It's not about making a name for yourself, a position for yourself. It's about who those born of God are. You may know what you were taken out of. Do you know what you were put into? You have become a prince in the house of God. To see how he rules, to learn of his ways, to know that your life is not like other lives. There are restrictions and boundaries there because of who you are, because of what you already represent, and the place, the seat that you will be given. Again, I will reiterate, this is regardless of your station of life. God-given, appointed, placement, authority, timing, position, circumstance. Who am I here now? How do I operate now? To think any other way than right now, how this works right now, is to already imagine yourself with responsibility and authority that you do not deserve, in the sense that you're thinking about it the wrong way. If you're thinking, well, when I get to this point, then wrong. You're already thinking about it the wrong way. A prince learns to act and function as a prince in every single circumstance he is in. It's very common for a king to send a... didn't we just read about an example like this? Or didn't you just share an example like this? About someone who was proposed to rule, so the king sent him off. It was when they were looking for a new ruler. You gave that illustration, I think. They were looking for a new ruler, and all the people recommended this one man. And so the current ruler sent him off to go take care of something for a long time. Well, let's see how he does it. Do you guys remember, who's watched the movie Kingdom of Heaven? Yeah? You guys seen it? Orlando Bloom. It's a really good movie. Do you remember that he is given an area, some small city to run? Yeah? Remember that? Remember it's a barren land, and he works the land and digs a well and irrigates the land, and it becomes very productive. Is he doing that for himself? For his own name? For his own renown? No, he's thinking about the people. He takes his place of appointment and doesn't consider it as a privilege over others, but as a responsibility to produce good things in the midst of that people. That's what God-appointed rulership is. Never anything less. Never for yourself, for your own name, for your own position, for your own ability to rise up yourself over another man. Any other thoughts? Elijah, we're discussing what it is to be a prince in God's house.
Which one did you just read?
We didn't yet. Preliminary discussion. You guys are especially quiet today. Yeah. Okay, let's look at 13:7. Kayla, read the first part, and Isaac, read the second part.
The master said, in forms of government, the states of Lu and Hui are like elder and younger brother.
That was short and sweet.
Yep. One interpretation of this cryptic remark is that Valjean, who notes that Lu was given fiefdom?
Fiefdom.
What is that?
It's like a fief is a small area of rulership.
Oh, okay.
It's, like the kingdoms many times are broken up into various, sects of rule.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a smaller portion.
Given as a fiefdom to the descendants of the Duke of Zhou, and Wei was given to the descendants of King Shu, the fourth and seventh sons, respectively, of King Wen.
So do you see they're both princes, actually. So the king, and so the fourth and seventh sons, they're both princes, and they're given, this is their opportunity to, in a sense, go prove their worth, to show how they're going to rule.
The two states were thus founded by brothers, and presumably had similarly virtuous governments as a result. Jushi, on the other hand, takes it as a negative comment on current affairs. This comment was made in the year 7 of Duke I of Lu's reign, which corresponds to the year 5 of Duke Chu's of Wei's reign.
So there's some comparison here, obviously, between Lu and Wei. So just notice who's who here.
In the government of Wei at this time, fathers were not behaving as true fathers, and sons were not behaving as true sons. And in the government of Lu, the Lord was not acting like a true Lord, and the ministers were not acting like true ministers. In the end, Duke Ai fled to Zhu and ended up dying in Yu. And Duke Chu escaped to the Song and also ended up dying in Yu. Thus, their situations were not so different. Most likely, both senses of Lu and Wei being like brothers is meant, and this is how Zhu Shi takes it. Lu is the fiefdom,
Five time, yeah.
okay, of the descendants of Duke Zhao, and Wei of the descendants of King Shu. And thus the two state were originally founded by the brothers. In Confucius' age, moreover, both had declined and become disordered to the point that their governments resembled one another. And this is why the master voices this lament.
Any thoughts?
So he's saying they're like each other in the way that their kingdoms fell into disorder, and in that way they resembled one another. Is that his main lament here?
Yeah, I mean, the lament is that they fell from what true rulership is about. And this is a reference to a statement that is repeated a few times by Confucius, and we've actually recently studied it in 1211. That being, fathers, be a good father, be a true father. Let the sons be true sons, you know, and so on, which that might be something more worth expounding on in this context, because that's really the center of the lament here, is that didn't happen. It should have, you know, they were appointed by a good ruler, that being Kang Shu. Descendants of Kang Shu and the fourth and seventh sons, respectively, of King Wen. Noah, are you aware of the characters?
Some of them, yeah.
There's a lack of context, obviously, here for us, for these rulers.
Well, King Wen, who's mentioned at the beginning of the commentary there, as being the father of both the Duke of Zhao and Kang Shu. The Duke of Zhao being the elder brother, not the oldest, but at least the fourth out of the 7, or at least the fourth out of however many sons he had, Kang Shu being the 7th. King Wen was one of the first kings of the Zhao dynasty. So obviously there was a delegation of rulership to each state to the sons, or to his sons. And it's not mentioned in the commentary, interestingly, but there might be some kind of emulation going on here from one state to the other. In this case, it would be Wei emulating Lu in the same way that a younger brother would emulate the elder. But that might kind of be besides the point, which is that while both states had a good start, there has been a decline in both as the entire empire has kind of fallen into a state of disarray, because we know that in Confucius's age, as it says in the very last part of the commentary, had become disordered to the point that their governments resembled one another, particularly in that they were constantly warring against each other, and that the ruler of all of them was just a ruler in name. There was no unity. There was no unified government, which is why his age, or the age that followed him, was called the Warring States period. There's not a whole lot that I can see right off the bat that's really being said here, besides the fact that we see an example of the decline of states during Confucius' time.
Because they didn't practice a certain virtue of propriety, I guess.
Yeah.
It is, I think, primarily a reference to that statement, let the fathers be true fathers, sons be true sons. Well, then let's move on to the next one.
Well, just real quick, that is interesting that Susha says that, because I don't know when Susha made this comment, if he was closer to that time period or if he was some centuries afterwards, but to say that the fathers were not behaving as true fathers and the sons as true sons in the state of Wei, in the government of Lu, the younger brother state.
Mm-hmm.
It was the lords not acting as true lords and the ministers not acting as true ministers. He doesn't expound on that, but it's interesting to note that in the one you have a decline in the quality of familial relations in the elder brother state, and a decline in the governmental relations in ruling relations in the younger brother state. So to make the observation that as described as being like elder and younger brother, you can deduce, this might be a bit of a stretch, but that when the relations within the family decline, then you can expect the decline of the government to follow. In the same way that
I don't think that's a stretch. Yeah.
the way that the elder brother state saw the decline of the family, which was followed by the younger brother state, which saw the decline of the government. And then both the family, well, primarily the government of both, and really all the states, besides Wei and Lu, saw the decline of government, which is really a decline of culture.
Yeah, that's, interesting. We think if something is not really passed on as a certain importance and consideration, then it's not lived out in that way. And it doesn't take very long for that decline to change. It can happen in a single generation. Okay, 13:8. Jaden, you read the first half up to the top of page 143, and then Naomi, read the second half.
The master said of Prince Jing of Wei, "He is good at running a household. When he first built his house, he said, 'Oh, it seems acceptable.' After he'd worked on it for a while, he said, 'Oh, it seems finished.' When he became wealthy and had improved it, he said, 'It seems beautiful to me.'" Prince Jing was a minister in Wei and scion of the ducal house, and thus in a position to enrich himself more or less without limit. Confucius praises him for his lack of acquisitiveness and his financial restraint. The prince was never particularly eager to acquire great wealth and the trappings that go along with it, and was always satisfied with what he had. As Wayne Contang notes, this praise is probably also meant by Confucius as an oblique jab of the majority of his contemporaries for their lack of similar restraint. He quotes a passage from the Yan family explication. I know the word, I just can't say it for some reason.
I know, that's funny. Some words get you that
Yeah.
way.
The record of ritual says, the desires cannot be given free rein, and the will should never be fully indulged.
Hmm?
We can plumb the farthest depths of the physical universe, but the limits of human desires cannot be known. The only way to establish limits is to reduce desires and know when to stop. A story in the Garden of Persuasions is directly relevant to 13.8.
Is this wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna need it with names.
Just try your best.
Master
Jirang.
Jirang established his household, and Mei I don't know how to say that.
You say May S, it doesn't really matter.
Mei S came to stay the night. Count Z said to him, "My household is beautiful, is it not?" Mei replied, "Sure, it is beautiful enough. It is just that I am worried." "Why are you worried?" "I serve my lord as a principled historian, and I've seen recorded the saying, 'The high mountains have deep springs, but no grass or trees grow there. On land where the great pine and cypress grow, the earth is not fertile. Now the lavishness of your household is inappropriate to your status, and I am worried that a man cannot be at ease in such a situation." 3 years after his household was complete, Mr. Z was ruined. The idea of reducing desires and knowing when to stop is a common theme throughout the warning states and Han texts, including the Laozi. The primitivists,
Mm-hmm.
is that
Taoist.
Taoists, thou tend to see anything exceeding basic survival requirements as excessive,
Mm-hmm.
while the Confucians are much more generous in deciding how much is enough. 13:8 might thus also be an oblique response to the primitivists. A virtuous man like Prince Jing can possess a wealthy, elaborate household and still not be the slave of his desires.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, in order to know how to be satisfied, it is not necessary for one to radically reject social luxuries and live in a dirt-floored thatched hut.
What do you think would be another word that could be used as a central theme here?
Self-discipline? Or, I don't know.
Moderation.
Not the word I was thinking, but that is applicable. The word I was thinking starts with a C.
Content.
Yeah. Contentment.
What does that mean again?
It means being satisfied with what you have and where you are. You see that contentment early on in the first statement. The master, like Confucius said of Prince Jing of Wei, he is good at running a household. When he first built his house, he said, "Oh, it seems acceptable," which means he was not looking for something grand. This is good. This is good for me. After he had worked on it for a while, he said, "That's good enough, basically. This is finished." When he became wealthy and improved it, he said, "It seems beautiful to me." So he was never ruled by his desire for more. Otherwise, he would have kind of expressed that insatiable appetite for more at the beginning. And so he's praised here because he didn't go beyond his contentment. Didn't go beyond what was needed. But there's another disparity that is discussed here in this Analect, which is that of the primitivist Taoist view, which is anything is too much. You should have nothing, less than nothing. So what are some thoughts around that?
Kind of reminds me of just like our spiritual walk, even in a lot of ways, because we talk about having a certain type of balance when it comes to contentedness, like where we are in life and even what we desire, because obviously where we are should always be something that we are grateful for, but there's still a looking ahead as well, because obviously the Lord continues to change our hearts and to reveal more as we continue to walk. But I guess I don't know, I see this kind of like almost as a picture of that right contentedness, where you're not condemning yourself, you're not looking down on where you're at, but there's that there's a possibility for more, right? And yeah, but obviously it was never, like you said, he was never ruled by his desire for anything great, but I don't know what else to say. So that
I think there's a lot looked into through this the story. Toward the end, he says, "The lavishness of your household is inappropriate to your status, and I'm worried that a man cannot be at ease in such a situation." So that means that not just he was going beyond in his own desire for things for himself. You see, we're talking about someone who's in a position of rule. That there's this balance between having enough and also what you have and what you have sway over being made available to those whom you rule over.
Perhaps a certain level of wisdom in terms of contentment would be required. One could be content in an unfinished house,
Mm-hmm.
but there obviously needs to be some level of understanding that that might be a bit too much restraint in terms of the completion or someone needs to be pursued beyond.
How you do with, I mean, and think about this in the context of God-given responsibility, whether that is in position of influence or wealth or whatever it is. You know, how do you perceive and how do you use what you have, no matter what your state of life is. Again, if we look ahead and we can, if your idea of princedom, being a prince, is what you will have and what you can do for yourself, then you've probably already lavished yourself beyond your status. Whereas, if you are moderate, as Noah mentioned, and content, then you have much more to offer. To whom much is given, much is required. A lot of people look at one of the reasons that those who, you know, in a sense have not, look at others who have, is because they can only see themselves in the context of being the one and the have and what they would do for themselves. That's what causes a great disparity there. Now, it can also be that the one who has is very unrighteous with what he has, and therefore creates that disparity in the other direction. But if equally share the understanding of that responsibility, then there is mutual contentment. I think that's expressed in other places in the Analects, where it's like, you may not want to have that position because it would come with a lot of responsibility. There are similar sentiments given to us in the scriptures related to those very things. And they're not specifically related to wealth. They cover every aspect of life.
Yeah, I think these characters they have here, I have a little bit of understanding. I haven't seen these two put together. I do recognize both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Drew usually means knowledge or knowing, and then Zul comes from Mansul, which means content or satisfied. I'm kind of already explaining what
Find it.
explains here, but I mean that I just looked it up, and Tritsu basically just means be content, which is kind of funny because it's so it's not a verb. This is a it wouldn't be a noun either, but I don't know, I just found it interesting. So it's basically I mean, it already says it here. It's the knowledge of what it means to be truly content. So you can basically have Tritsu as maybe like a virtue.
Yeah, there's obviously some concept behind the word. Typically, when they set the word apart like that, it's a culturally understood term
Yeah.
of something very, very often related to virtue. A virtue of life, a virtue of a person. Yeah. No, anything to add?
Only that it's probably not best understood as simply being content, because even those who don't know how to be content, generally speaking, can still find like
Satisfaction.
sometimes contentment for short periods of time.
And that would be, sorry to interrupt, that would be, there is another word for satisfaction, which is mei, which is basically immediate satisfaction. Manzu is true contentment.
Yeah. But a person with Jutsu has a mind or proclivity to, I would say, the simple, or towards the simple things of life, which is why it is helpful that he brought up the Taoists, but interestingly, this author doesn't really, he takes the most modern view of the Taoists as primitivists, which makes sense because it was a movement during that time, and that's how people came to know the doctrine of the Taoists, because you did absolutely have people that would go out and preach that message of becoming like just a simple farmer living in a what did they say, a dirt floored thatched hut. But that unfortunately doesn't actually grasp the real message behind those teachings, because it really spoke of the denial of those things which lead to excess and striving in ourselves. So unfortunately, many interpret that to mean reject everything in society, because like that's just what people do throughout history. It's ridiculous, but they
Pretty wide swings.
they take they look at the corruption of society, and they take good teachings and ideas and use them as a way to react against corruption, and then it
Becomes corrupt.
it itself becomes not what it was ever meant to be.
Right.
So that's what we see the Taoists doing here, and that's really all the Taoists were known to be in this time. But
Not
he
really
doesn't really do Taoism justice here, which is okay, because we're not really looking into Taoism right now. But anyways, my point was to say that Jutsu is a kind of it's a posture of mind and heart towards life that can find contentment in ways that others without it simply can't. And often that looks like being able to appreciate anything, regardless of circumstance or life position. And that actually is very much in line with Confucian thought, because it doesn't matter if you're a pauper on the streets or a wealthy man. This is actually Taoist teaching. The material things of life really hold no sway over your mind and heart.
Yeah.
There's a greater vision of life as to what actually brings joy to the soul, eternal joy. And it's none of those things. And so it doesn't matter where you are in life, is the point.
And I think the point that's expressed
And having
here,
that is Jesu.
yeah, it's that you are able in such a way to have contentment and take joy in the simple things that the external things do not have, as you said, a sway over you. So put this in some modern teenager language for our folks, because there's so many that are very excited and happy about their vehicles. You can drive a Prius or a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. The contentment of, or the joy of being able to move around and travel and have some ability to do that, like, you know, I can walk and I'm capable, or I have a horse. Or I have a simple horse, a mule, and I'm able to get from this place to that and do exactly what I need to do, and it's wonderful to be able to do that. Or I have this Arabian stallion and it glistens in the sun. But both achieve the same purpose. But the one who is satisfied with the simple can take just as much joy in the stallion as he does in the mule. And even recognize, yeah, this is great. Just like the Prince of Jing says, this is beautiful. But he was already found joy and contentment with what he had before. I think that the point here from the Confucian, when the primitivist Taoist view is compared to the Confucian view, they seem to be at a disparity when, I think, as Noah expressed, the true Taoist view is not, it's indifferent to that. That's the whole point. And so they're not really at odds. That's what I've found very interesting, to go on a tangent here, is that mostly where Taoism and Confucianism are put at odds is because it's a twisting of both that causes them to be at odds, where there is this, the mean of life that is this, it's like a balance of those things. And it does not take for granted the most basic simple things, nor does it take advantage of that which is beyond or below it. And so there is a settlement, there's a peace in the inner man. There's not a striving for placement, possession, or position.
You asked us to think about our future, like at the start. It was funny you said that, because it was actually last night. I was reading some article. I don't quite recall the exact nature of it, but it was like just envisioning for like 17 seconds a day, like your highest goal being achieved, actually does a lot to like help you actualize that. It's some like random thing, but I was even thinking, like, what would even be my highest goal? What would be my future? And I actually like struggled to even think of anything. And I think I didn't know if it was negative or positive. I actually was kind of worried, because I realized I was perfectly happy where I was in life. I don't think I really had anything else I wanted. I have always done a good job, I think, of just wanting stability, and I just don't know if that's the right place to be with contentment.
Well, think of yourselves again as a prince in God's house. You have a destiny. You have an allotment and an appointment. For me, my perspective in that is, now I know what's ahead of me, and I want to achieve it with grace and in a righteous manner. I want to do that well. So I think that's a step, that's a next step, is to better understand for you what God has appointed you for. And that's not something that you're taking onto yourself, right? It's not something that you say, okay, I'm all gung-ho now and I'm going to be this because I want it. It's a different desire. It's a realization of who you are and what you've been appointed to be, and then coming alongside an agreement with, yes, I want to be shaped into that so that I can fulfill it in the right way. That's kind of the next level. Or, the other is that you're always in a place of unsatisfaction. I'm not content with where I am because I don't have this. I haven't made it to that place. I'm not in this relationship. I'm not in this phase of life. So there's just like perpetual discontentment, perpetual unsatisfaction, because everything that you want is always ahead of you. And what you guys may not realize is if you create that as a pattern of thinking now, it'll never change. It's always going to be what the next thing is. It's always going to be looking ahead and, oh man, I wonder what God has for me there. When God already has a way of life, a way of peace and settlement in the inner man for every place and season and relationship and circumstance of life.
Mine's the exact opposite. I'm always very content where I'm put, and I'm honestly scared if anything changes.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. That's the next step for you is, well, no, there's more for you than that. A prince is born into responsibility. There's no choice in the matter. That is what and who you are. Now, you may never fulfill that role, and, historically we can see that there were many like that. And, some were, there was you guys remember, I guess everybody, I know I always refer to certain movies because there's things that stick out to me sometimes, but in the first Dune movie, you remember how young Paul Atreides interacts with his father about his born place to become something. I don't even want to do that because he didn't really understand it. And what he did understand about it, he didn't like. But then when he was in by way of circumstance of life, put in a position where he had a new understanding of what that meant, okay, I want to do this right. You see what I'm saying? There was a huge internal transition that took place, and it wasn't simply revenge. There was not a single motivator there. There was a different view of life that was taken on. And actually it became for a people, unto a people. And I'm not saying that that's a perfect illustration by any means, but the change of mindset, the different understanding is very different. And that is the place that you guys are. And it doesn't matter, literally doesn't matter whether you end up on a high throne or in a meager, unknown place. It doesn't matter. All of those are the extra things that are added on based on where you have your peace and satisfaction in life. So when we take joy in the simple things, then the excess does not have sway over us. We're not longing for it. We're not living for it, striving for it. Nor do we feel at a loss when we don't have it. We're over time. Any other final thoughts? Elijah closes in prayer.
Lord, we bless your holy name, Father. I thank you for these people here and gathered for you, Lord, unto you. I pray that we could live in a way as if we are set apart for you, Lord, or that we would be in this world but not of it, Lord, a people that seek you in all times of life. I pray that as we continue to come into a deeper understanding of what it means to be a son, or even to be a prince in your kingdom. Lord, that we would seek to do that not only in the right way, but with you, and Lord, alongside your work, Father. I pray for each heart here that we would not be wary of our future, Lord, but be where you have us, and Lord, take effort to do well with the things you have given us now, Lord, and that we would do these things together. Pray that your name would be represented in our lives. Pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. What's the timeline on your rig?
I don't know. He started on it yesterday, I think.
Oh, did he?
So.
All right.
John, is he the
I'm doing alright.
I guess sometimes you just sleep directly straight through your time. Like I woke up, I was awake at 7:30. I had my 902 alarm on. I said it's gonna wake me up, and then I wake up at 9:49.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just waiting there
You
for
guys just
you.
need to come wake me up. Just,
I'm afraid to, honestly.
obviously, if I know I need to be up, you just need to come wake me up.
Door hanging?
That movie was so bad.
Did you guys have a good time at least?
I mean, it was funny because people were just yelling.
Did they yell?
Oh my god.
Did you watch it again with me?
We can watch it again. We can watch it.
I told Grant not to watch it because I thought we were gonna watch it.
We can still do it. But
I
but
said
the
with
theater experience was funny though. It's like people were just flipping.
The videos people throwing popcorn.
No, I have videos of all the lines. People were just screaming.
Wait, I wanna see them. Did you and Liam yell?
No.
We weren't all that.
Yes, I heard you and then you.
Oh, yeah. Is that your, oh, yeah. How you doing? Good to see you. How are you doing? All right. That's good. I know
You didn't have any homework, did you? Huh?
Wait.
You didn't assign any homework,
Yeah,
right?
you did.
Hey, wait, you did?
What about that haiku you wrote?
Oh, haiku, never mind. That's it.
Dang it, I was scared.
I did it. I just couldn't remember for a second. Okay, I was like, wait, what are we going over?
It's so early that you didn't even remember.
I actually did. I did it pretty early in the week.
I did too.
I took the best picture I could. I apologize for its quality.
Oh,
Wait, let me see your pics.
Well, it's gonna spoil what the thing is.
Well, I have like my thing is in the thing.
I know. I just have mine named haiku. Okay, see, read mine. Oh wait, that's not mine. That's Benji's. I got pull up Benji's.
11.
Oh, well, okay, the way it crossed.
Oh wait.
It looks like
Yeah,
it, but
the
that
way
one
it cropped. I
actually
had it like a break, but it just like cropped it to make it closer for some reason.
something in nature?
No, you think it would be. You gotta think outside.
Is it an animal?
No, not nature at all. Very man-made.
A light.
It can be used as a light. You can scroll up.
Oh, a fireplace. Nice.
Says it aloud.
Sorry.
It's not really.
Mine
It wasn't.
literally
It
ended
wasn't.
up
Mine wasn't. It wasn't meant to be enigmatic. That's just how mine turned out.
Mine either. Sorry. You can maybe bring a chair, another one right there.
Looking forward to seeing the drawings. That'll be cool.
Oh, drawings.
Oh yeah, if anybody actually is like good at photography.
Photos. Yes, it is.
Mine was also kind of lame to take a picture.
What if it's one over a picture?
Huh?
What if it's a good picture?
I mean, mine isn't really.
Oh.
That's what I was like. The thing I chose was kind of lame to take a picture of. There was only so much I could do. Yeah, me. Draw.
Does it? Do you like it? It's comfortable, but I feel like
I can't lean back and
Oh yeah, yeah.
leaning back
You and I.
Are you doing the front back? Oh, yeah, probably. No, not all the time, but I'll do it. Normally. I don't know if I can.
Are there any more of those drinks?
Yeah, we can cover it. Any more of those? Do you want me to scoot? We can move the table here. Wait, let's pull this chair back. I'm switching between right now. Caleb's moving over
Mine
there.
is everything pretty good.
I would have breakfast on.
We got room right here.
Yeah, there's like a.
That's what I kept telling you. You said
Well,
you wanted
it's
to
kind
know.
of awkward because you don't really get the.
That's fine.
Where are you going?
Oh, that's a stuffed table.
We love each other around.
This can move over here,
Maybe.
and Isaac can speak in the middle, right there. And someone else can sit over here.
Oh, that was really sweet of you.
That works. We make it work.
And they're afraid of us.
We all here?
Isaac doesn't bite.
Pretty much.
So no one wants to sit right here? Like,
Isaac's gonna bite him.
There's Liam.
I just saw him. Maybe. I just saw him walk in. I actually am a little chilly. I don't know why. You don't have to make it super warm, but I did notice it's a little cooler in here than normal. Not super.
I feel like staying up there. It doesn't really do things enough.
Seems a little awkward with the Mac, whatever, iPad. Yeah, but what is the noise for that alarm?
Nothing, it doesn't have much.
Oh, that's just the vibration.
Are you guys?
Wow. I think we've waited long enough. Who would like to volunteer for their haiku? Everyone? Alright. What I'm gonna try to do, just so that, well, I mean, I guess actually everybody has access to the drive, but for those of us that are not going to be reading it as it's read, I might try to put it up on my iPad. The picture, that is.
Another picture.
Oh, I know you
Yeah, that is cool.
I actually brought my iPad out because I thought Grandpa was going to be here so he could look at it, but I don't see him.
We saw him earlier in town.
And he said he was going to stop there, so I guess I'll just wait. Okay, reading poems now.
Haiku.
Today I'd like to get through most, if not all, of the haikus. So I would like everyone to offer comments as we go. So each person to do that, but not for each haiku. Does that make sense? So a few of us for each haiku, but I don't want it to be the same few people every time. Does that make sense?
And not every person has to comment on every.
That's right. Yeah.
okay, ready?
You ready?
pain stemming upwards, as her vines pierce through my skin. Now I know beauty.
What inspired you to write this?
I actually wrote it off the picture that I drew. I had drawn it like before class last week, and when we got assigned this, I wanted to do it based on this picture.
Is it meant to be beauty as we've often discussed it here, or is it more of an unrealistic expectation of what beauty is? Because to me, as well, with the symbolism of the drawing, it almost feels like beauty in quotation marks might be more like applicable to this. Like this, especially with you girls, the unrealistic beauty expectations set by our society, and kind of how that like almost very symbolical of this picture, like forms deep wounds on you to try and live up to that. So as her vines pierce through my skin, now I know this beauty. Right now, you know what it means to suffer for the sake of something so utterly pointless and vain, and so utterly fleeting as that of a flower. But the cuts it causes being lasting and permanent. I didn't know. Was that your intention with that?
It wasn't, but that's definitely one way you could look at it. I like that perspective as well. The perspective was supposed to be, you have to know pain to understand beauty.
I see.
So, but you could definitely see it that way. I like that perspective as well.
Well, it's just because the thing that is beautiful in that sense is the thing inflicting the damage. But I can see your perspective as well. I think both are very beautiful. Thank you.
Since you were inspired to write your haiku off the drawing, what inspired you to draw that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I was just
Can you
kind
guys
of.
speak up? I'm so sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah. I'm not sure what exactly inspired me to draw the picture. It was just something I saw in my head, and I thought it was a good imagery to put into an art piece.
Very good, thank you. Can you pick our next reader?
Let's do Benji's.
The way in and out. Falling, it sifts from the hand. Living vortex, breathe. And there's the little picture I drew.
I guess it kind of worked this way. Kayla, when Jaden asked you some questions, but from here on out, I'm going to have us, after reading the poem, give just a brief explanation of how you arrived at it and even what it means, what it's supposed to mean. And then we can offer comments. Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be dust. And so the first line, the way in and out, was kind of my thought with going back to Genesis when God created Adam from dust. And then obviously when we pass away, we also go back to dust. So kind of like the way in and out of life. And then the second two are like supposed to be a picture of when Adam was created. So kind of God with the sand in his, or the dust in his hand, and it's falling out. And then the living vortex, and then his breath put into it, which kind of makes it alive. That's kind of thought there.
Mm-hmm. And now read it again.
Okay.
After your explanation, we'll do that for everyone as well.
The way in and out. Falling, it sifts from the hand. Living vortex, breathe.
Yeah, when he shared this the other day, poetry reading, I thought he was talking about sand, but I guess it's close enough. But yeah, I like when he told me it was dust, I was able to quickly pick up on the illustration of Adam and the light in the dust.
Yeah, there's an interesting balance to me between the brevity of life and the meaning of life, because obviously you're playing off of the imagery of our existence being like dust. So we were made from the dust, and to the dust will return, that kind of idea. But you end the poem with living vortex breathe, which is actually the very way we came to have life, even coming from the dust, is because God breathed his life into us. And so, despite how short and, from one point of view, even meaningless life is, there is still the very breath of God in us. And we are, in a sense, to breathe that same life. Which I kind of see in your line, living vortex breathe. I think you did a very good job.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Sorry if it seems like we're going a little fast paced, but if there's more time you want to spend on a certain individual's poem, or you want to offer thoughts to them later on, we can do that. But in class time, we're going to try to make our way through all the poetry today.
Let's do Isaac's.
All right.